All right, so today we are going deep into HRM, Human Resource Management.
Always fun to revisit the fundamentals.
Yeah, for sure. And, this textbook excerpts we're looking at today is really interesting because it kind of reframes HRM.
Oh, how so?
Well, we tend to think of it as just paperwork and policies, all that stuff, but this really emphasizes that it's about aligning like how you manage employees with the company's whole strategy.
Right, making sure everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Exactly. But here's the thing, it's all about having motivated employees, which is, well, that's a whole other can of worms, right?
You've hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
Motivated employees are the engine that drives success.
For sure. And this excerpt, it throws out some big names, some heavy hitters in motivation theory.
Ah, yes, the classics. Always a good starting point.
We've got Maslow, Locke, and Latham.
And of course, Lawrence and Neria with their four-drive theory.
That's my favorite. Gotta love the four-drive theory. It really gets to the heart of what makes people tick, deeper than just the basics.
It's a fascinating model
Yeah.
and surprisingly practical.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how these theories actually translate into real-world situations, because it's one thing to read about them in a textbook, but it's another thing to actually apply them, right?
Right, let's bridge that gap between theory and practice.
Exactly. So let's start with Maslow. Everyone knows the hierarchy of needs, the pyramid.
It's iconic. But how often do we actually use it to analyze workplace behavior?
Good point. It's like we all know it, but do we actually use it?
Right. For example, think about a team member who's constantly stressed about deadlines.
Oh, yeah, we've all worked with that person.
No, maybe they're not actually lazy. Maybe it's not just a simple lack of motivation. Perhaps their need for security isn't being met.
Interesting.
Maybe they're worried about job security. Maybe they feel a lack of support from management.
That makes a lot of sense. It's easy to just jump to the conclusion that someone's not motivated.
But there might be deeper psychological needs at play that we're completely missing.
So we need to dig a little deeper.
Exactly. Address those underlying needs, and you might just unlock a whole new level of motivation.
Okay, so that's Maslow. What about Locke and Latham's goal-setting theory?
This one's all about SMART goals.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
You got it. But how do we actually translate that into increased motivation?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Imagine you're a manager and you're trying to motivate your team to increase sales.
Classic scenario.
Now, instead of just saying, sell more, you work with them to set specific targets.
Oh, so it's a collaborative approach.
Exactly. You break those targets down into smaller, achievable steps, and you provide regular feedback on their progress.
So it's about giving them a clear path, not just a vague directive.
Precisely. And by involving them in the goal-setting process, you create a sense of ownership and commitment.
That makes sense. They're more invested in the outcome.
And that fuels intrinsic motivation. Now, are you ready for the four-drive theory?
Oh, I've been waiting for this. This is where it gets juicy.
Lawrence and Neria identified four core drives. Acquire, bond, learn, and defend.
It's so insightful because it goes beyond those basic needs.
Right. It taps into those deeper motivations.
Like, let's say you have a top performer who seems to have lost their spark.
Happens to the best of us.
Now, you could offer them a raise, a bonus, right? Appealing to the drive to acquire.
The classic solution.
Yeah.
But what if their real issue is feeling isolated or undervalued?
Ah, the drive to bond.
Exactly. That raise might not solve the problem at all.
So we need to understand which drive is dominant in a given situation.
And tailor our approach accordingly.
But that seems super complex, especially with a whole team of people with different personalities and motivations.
It definitely adds a layer of complexity, no doubt about it.
So how do we even begin to navigate that?
That's the art of management, isn't it? It's about observation, understanding individual needs,
So it's like a puzzle, figuring out what makes each person tick.
and finding ways to appeal to multiple drives simultaneously.
Oh, give me an example.
Let's say you design a team project. You structure it in a way that allows individuals to showcase their skills.
Appealing to the drive to acquire.
Right. But at the same time, you foster collaboration and camaraderie.
Tapping into the drive to bond.
Exactly. So you're hitting multiple drives at once.
Okay, so we've got these motivation theories, but how do we actually put them into practice?
Well, our textbook excerpt actually delves into some specific motivation strategies.
Let's hear it. Lay it on me.
We'll start with the most obvious one, money.
Ah, the good old financial incentive.
Seems like a no-brainer, right? Pay people more, they work harder.
But I'm sensing there's a but coming.
There's always a but. While performance-related pay, bonuses, commissions, Those can be effective.
Sure, they can.
They can also backfire, create unhealthy competition, or even incentivize unethical behavior if we're not careful.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's like that saying, be careful what you reward. You might just get it.
Words to live by. So what about those non-monetary motivators?
Those are always fascinating to me. They can be so powerful.
One of the most potent ones is the opportunity for career advancement.
Ah, so it's not just about the money in the moment.
It's about the prospect of growth, development.
That makes a lot of sense, especially for people who are ambitious, who really want to make a mark.
Right, that need for achievement and mastery.
This makes me think of the drive to learn from the 4 drive theory.
Excellent connection. People want to feel like they're growing, expanding their skills.
And that's where investment in training comes in.
Bingo. And it's not just about the skills they acquire.
It's about the message it sends.
Exactly. When a company invests in your development, they're saying, we believe in you. We value your potential.
It's a huge vote of confidence.
And that can boost morale and loyalty like nothing else.
I imagine a supportive work environment plays a big role here, too.
Absolutely. The textbook talks about things like counseling, mentoring programs.
Even assistance with personal issues that might be affecting their work.
Right. Recognizing that employees are whole people with lives outside of work.
It's about creating that culture where people feel supported.
Valued, not just as workers, but as human beings.
Okay, but let's be real. Sometimes performance issues do come up.
They do. It's inevitable.
So how do we handle their situations?
The textbook does mention sanctions, which are basically penalties.
The stick, so to speak.
But it emphasizes that a positive, supportive environment is usually more effective.
So carrots over sticks whenever possible.
Exactly. It's about addressing the root cause of the issue.
Providing constructive feedback, creating a plan for improvement.
Exactly. Guiding them towards success, not punishing them for setbacks.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's move on to training options.
Perfect segue, because training plays a key role in this whole motivation puzzle.
All right, let's see how it fits in.
The textbook highlights 2 main types, on the job and off the job.
Okay, classic categories.
On the job is all about learning by doing, hands-on experience in the actual work environment.
Great for people who learn best by jumping right in.
Exactly. Then you have off the job, which takes place outside the workplace.
So things like conferences, online courses.
It could be formal qualifications, professional development programs.
Broadening their horizons.
Exactly. Equipping them with new knowledge and skills that they can bring back to the workplace.
Okay, so how does this all tie back to motivation?
Think back to the drive to learn, the drive to acquire.
Right, right.
By offering these training opportunities, you're tapping into those desires.
For growth, for advancement.
You're showing them that you're invested in their development, and they can boost their motivation, their loyalty.
It's a win-win.
Employees get to expand their skills. The company benefits from a more skilled workforce.
Okay, I'm convinced training is key.
And speaking of aligning individual growth with company goals, let's move on to performance management.
All right, hit me with it. What's the lowdown on performance management?
The textbook defines it as a process focused on improving both business and individual performance.
Okay, so it's a two-way street.
Exactly. And one approach they highlight is management by objectives, MBO.
Oh, I've heard of that. But remind me, what's the gist of it?
It's all about collaborative goal setting.
So not just the manager dictating goals from on high.
It's a two-way conversation. Managers and employees working together.
To set goals that are challenging but attainable.
And that align with the overall objectives of the company.
Okay, so everyone's on the same page, working towards a common purpose.
And that increases buy-in from employees. They feel a sense of ownership.
Which leads to better performance.
Exactly. Now, what's crucial in this whole process?
Feedback.
Bingo. The textbook talks about appraisals, formal assessment.
Okay, so that's where the rubber meets the road.
It's about providing constructive feedback, celebrating successes, identifying areas for improvement.
Sounds like a good opportunity for some honest and open communication.
It is. And it's not just about the manager giving feedback.
Oh, right. There's self-evaluation, too.
Exactly. Encourage employees to reflect on their own performance.
That makes a lot of sense. It fosters that sense of ownership and accountability.
They're not just passively receiving feedback, they're actively engaged in the process.
But how do we ensure we're getting a well-rounded picture of someone's performance?
That's where employee observation comes in, gathering feedback from various sources.
So not just the manager's perspective?
It could be peers, subordinates, even customers.
A 360-degree view.
Exactly, to get a holistic understanding of their strengths and areas for growth.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, this next topic might be a bit less cheery, but it's an important one.
Ah, yes, the elephant in the room.
It's termination.
But the textbook reframes it as termination management.
Okay, so it's not just about firing people.
It covers all the ways an employee can leave a job.
Resignation, retirement, redundancy.
And yes, even dismissal.
So it's about handling those departures gracefully.
Regardless of the circumstances.
And I'm guessing there are legal and financial aspects to consider.
Absolutely. The textbook mentions entitlement consideration.
Things like final pay, severance packages.
Accrued vacation time, all of that.
Making sure everything is handled fairly and transparently.
Right. But it's not just about the legalities. There are also transition considerations.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's about providing support during these changes.
So helping them find a new role, if that's appropriate.
Or offering resources for retirement planning.
It's about recognizing that these transitions can be tough.
And offering support can go a long way.
Okay, so even when someone's leaving the company, there's still that human element.
Always. Now, ready to step into the sometimes contentious world of workplace relations?
Bring it on. Let's talk about the dynamics between employers and employees.
It's a fascinating area, full of nuances.
I'm ready to dive in.
The textbook highlights the key players.
Employers, employees, obviously.
Unions, employer associations, government bodies.
A lot of moving parts.
It is. And HRM professionals have a crucial role to play in navigating these relationships.
So they're kind of like the peacekeepers.
I like that analogy. They're often involved in negotiating employment agreements.
Ensuring compliance with regulations.
And mediating disputes.
Trying to keep everyone happy.
Well, at least trying to keep things fair and balanced.
Right, that's the goal.
Now, in Australia, the Fair Work Commission is a key player.
I've heard of them, but I'm a bit fuzzy on what they actually do.
They're an independent body that oversees workplace relations.
So they're like the referees of the workplace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They set minimum wages, they resolve disputes, they approve agreements.
They make sure everyone's playing by the rules.
Right. Now, let's talk about the difference between awards and agreements.
Okay, break it down for me.
Awards are industry-wide minimum standards
For wages, working conditions,
set by the Fair Work Commission. It's like a safety net.
making sure everyone gets a basic level of fair treatment,
Exactly. Then you have enterprise agreements.
which are negotiated at the workplace level.
Right. Between employers and employees or their union representatives,
So it's a more tailored agreement.
reflecting the specific needs of that workplace.
Okay, so awards are the baseline, and agreements can go above and beyond that.
Precisely. But there's a check and balance system in place.
So it's not just a free-for-all.
Definitely not. These agreements need to be approved by the Fair Work Commission.
To make sure they meet legal requirements and that everyone's actually agreed.
Exactly. It's a safeguard against exploitation.
Protecting the rights of employees.
Now, speaking of protection, the textbook mentions unfair dismissal.
That sounds serious.
It is. Employees have the right to challenge their dismissal if they believe it was unjust.
So it's not just you're fired and that's the end of it.
Not at all. The Fair Work Commission can mediate disputes, even reinstate employees.
If they find the dismissal was unfair.
It's about holding employers accountable.
And protecting employees from being treated unjustly.
Right. Now, what about discrimination in the workplace?
That's a big one.
Absolutely prohibited under the Fair Work Act.
And for good reason.
It's about creating a workplace where everyone has equal opportunities.
Regardless of race, gender, age, all of that.
Exactly. Fostering a culture of inclusivity where everyone feels valued and respected.
But how do we actually make sure that happens in practice?
It's more than just having a policy, that's for sure.
Right. It's got to be more than just words on paper.
HRM professionals have a key role to play here.
Okay, what can they do?
Create clear policies and procedures.
Provide training to employees and managers.
And foster a culture where everyone feels comfortable speaking up.
If they experience or witness discrimination.
It's about making it safe for people to raise concerns.
Right, to speak truth to power.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment.
All right, what's next?
Leave entitlements.
Ha! Those precious days off.
Essential for work-life balance.
Every employee's dream.
Well-deserved breaks. Australian employees have a range of leave entitlements.
Annual leave, sick leave.
Parental leave.
All the important stuff.
And these are designed to ensure that employees can take time off.
Without fear of losing their jobs.
Exactly. For rest, for family responsibilities, for personal matters.
So it's not just about being nice, it's actually the law.
Right. The Fair Work Act sets out the minimum requirements.
But enterprise agreements can offer even more.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that employees have lives outside of work.
And they need time to attend to those things.
Now, this ties into another trend that's been gaining momentum:
I'm listening.
Flexible work arrangements.
Ah, yes, the future of work.
More and more employees are seeking flexibility.
In terms of hours, location, work patterns.
Technology has made remote work more feasible
And a lot of employers are embracing it.
as a way to attract and retain talent.
It seems like everyone wins.
Right. Employees get more control over their schedules.
Better work-life balance.
Employers get a more engaged and productive workforce.
As long as it's implemented thoughtfully,
With clear communication and expectations,
communication is key.
always, especially with remote teams, flexible schedules.
Okay, now let's talk about something that's absolutely essential.
Hit me with it.
Occupational health and safety.
Ah, yes. Protecting the well-being of employees.
It's not just about hard hats and safety goggles.
It's about creating a culture of safety.
Where everyone feels responsible for preventing accidents and injuries.
Exactly. Employers have a legal obligation to provide a safe work environment,
And employees have a responsibility to follow safety procedures.
to report any hazard.
Yeah, it's a two-way street.
But it's not just about physical safety.
Oh, right. Mental health is just as important.
Absolutely. Especially in today's fast-paced work environments.
Stress, burnout, those are huge issues.
And they can't be ignored
So how can HR help?
by creating a culture of support,
Providing access to mental health resources.
promoting work-life balance
Fostering a workplace where people feel comfortable speaking up.
if they're struggling.
Okay, I'm seeing a theme here.
What's that?
Communication, support, creating a positive and healthy work environment.
You're getting it. Now, I know this might sound a bit boring.
Oh, I doubt it. Hit me with it.
Record keeping.
Ah, the less glamorous side of HRM.
Maybe, but absolutely crucial.
Why is that?
It's about maintaining accurate and up-to-date records.
Employment contracts, pay slips, performance reviews.
Leave records, all of that.
Sounds like a lot of paperwork.
It can be. But these records are essential.
For legal compliance, resolving disputes.
Even protecting employees' rights.
So it's like a paper trail in case anything goes wrong.
Exactly. And with technology, a lot of these records are electronic now.
Cloud-based systems, all of that.
Makes it easier to manage and access the information.
But still got to be careful about privacy and security.
Absolutely. Clear procedures are essential.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about aligning HRM with business goals.
We dove deep into motivation theories.
Explored a whole range of strategies for creating a motivated and productive work environment.
And we even touched on the complexities of workplace relations.
The role of the Fair Work Commission, awards and agreements.
Unfair dismissal, discrimination, leave entitlements.
Flexible work arrangements, occupational health and safety, even record keeping.
We've been busy.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover in this dynamic field.
Well, you know what that means.
Hit me with it.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive.
Where we'll continue to explore the fascinating world of workplace relations.
And delve into the future of HRM.
Can't wait. We'll see you there. Okay, so we're back and ready to dive deeper into this whole world of workplace relations. Last time we were talking about like the players involved, employers and employees and unions, that whole ecosystem. It feels like a bit of a balancing act, right?
It really is a constant dance between, different interests. But the goal is, or should be, a system that's fair for everyone.
Right. It's not like a win-lose situation. The textbook we're looking at really emphasizes that, talking about the roles of unions and employer associations and the government trying to make sure everything runs smoothly.
Unions are super important for advocating for employees, making sure they get fair wages, safe working conditions, all that.
It's about collective bargaining power, right?
Yeah.
Employees having a stronger voice when it comes to things that, well, affect their lives.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side,
Yeah.
you've got employer associations.
Right. Representing the interests of businesses.
They provide guidance on legal stuff, offer training, lobby for policies that benefit their members.
So it's kind of like unions pushing for employee rights and employer associations pushing back, making sure businesses aren't getting a raw deal.
It's a bit of a tug of war, yeah. And then you have the government trying to keep everything balanced.
So where does the government actually fit into all of this? I mean, what's their role?
Well, in Australia, you have the Fair Work Act, which is kind of like the rule book for workplace relations.
The rule book, huh? So does that mean everyone has to follow the exact same rules no matter what industry they're in or how big the company is?
It's not quite that simple. The Fair Work Act sets out the basic rights and responsibilities, but there's also room for flexibility through different types of agreements.
Right, we talked about awards before, those industry-wide minimum standards.
Exactly. But then there are those enterprise agreements. Remember those?
Yeah, the ones that are negotiated at the workplace level, right? So it's more tailored to the specific needs of that company and its employees.
Exactly. They can cover things like pay rates, working hours, other conditions that are specific to that workplace. It's kind of like customizing the rules of the game.
But there are still limits, right? It's not just a free-for-all.
Definitely not. These agreements still have to be approved by the Fair Work Commission to make sure they're legal and that everyone's actually agreed to them.
So it's a safeguard, preventing employers from taking advantage of employees.
Right. Now, speaking of protecting employees, the textbook mentions something called unfair dismissal.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It's a pretty big deal. Employees have the right to challenge their dismissal if they think it wasn't fair.
So it's not just a case of you're fired and that's it.
Nope. There are procedures in place to protect employees. Like if they were discriminated against or if the process wasn't fair, they can fight it.
So there's some recourse for employees if they feel like they've been wronged.
Right. The Fair Work Commission can get involved, mediate disputes, and even reinstate employees if they find the dismissal was unfair.
So it's not just the employer's word against the employees.
Exactly. Now, speaking of unfair treatment, what about discrimination in the workplace?
Huge issue.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
totally legal under the Fair Work Act. It's about making sure everyone has equal opportunities, no matter their background.
Race, gender, age, disability, all of that.
Right, all those protected attributes. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected.
But how do you actually make that happen? It seems like it takes more than just having a policy in place.
You're absolutely right. It's about creating a culture of inclusivity where everyone feels like they belong and that their voice matters.
And that's where HRM professionals come in.
Right. They have a huge role to play. It's about providing training, creating safe spaces for people to speak up if they experience discrimination, and really just leading by example.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about something a little more enjoyable for employees?
Like leave entitlements,
Ah, yes, those precious days off.
well-deserved breaks, and Australian employees have some pretty good leave entitlements.
Annual leave, sick leave.
Parental leave, all the important stuff.
It's not just about being nice, it's the law.
Exactly. The Fair Work Act sets out the minimums. But remember, enterprise agreements can be even more generous.
So it's not just about maximizing profits, it's about recognizing that employees have lives outside of work.
Exactly. And this ties into another trend that's become really important:
I'm listening.
flexible work arrangements.
Ah, yes,
Yeah.
the future of work is here.
More and more employees are looking for flexibility, whether it's in terms of hours, location, or how they structure their work.
Especially after the whole remote work boom in recent years.
Right. And technology has made it so much easier. A lot of employers are embracing it too as a way to attract and retain talent.
It seems like a win-win. Employees get more control over their lives, employers get happier and more productive employees.
As long as it's managed well, clear communication and expectations are key.
Can't stress that enough. Communication is so important in any workplace, but especially when you're dealing with remote teams or flexible schedules.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about something that's really important, but sometimes overlooked: occupational health and safety.
Okay, so we're not just talking about hard hats and safety goggles here.
It's about the whole picture: physical and mental well-being.
Right, it's about creating a workplace where people feel safe and healthy, both physically and mentally.
Exactly. Employers have a legal duty to provide a safe work environment, and employees have a responsibility to follow safety procedures and report any hazards.
It's a team effort, basically.
Right. And mental health is just as important as physical health, especially in today's world.
So much stress, so much pressure to perform.
Absolutely. Burnout is a huge problem. So
Yeah.
HR needs to play a role in supporting employees' mental health, offering resources, promoting work-life balance.
Making sure people feel comfortable speaking up if they're struggling.
Exactly. A healthy workforce is a happy workforce, right?
Couldn't agree more. Okay, I know this might sound a little dry, but I'm curious about the whole record-keeping aspect of HRM.
Ah, yes, the paperwork. Not the most exciting part, but super important.
Why is that?
Well, you need to keep track of things like employment contracts, pay slips, performance reviews.
Leave records, all that fun stuff.
It can be a lot, but these records are essential for legal compliance, resolving disputes, and even just protecting employees' rights.
Right, if something goes wrong, you need to be able to prove what happened.
Exactly. It's like having a paper trail to back up any claims. And these days, a lot of those records are electronic, stored in HR systems.
Makes it easier to manage, I guess.
Definitely. But you still need clear procedures in place to make sure the information is accurate, confidential, and compliant with privacy regulations.
So to sum up, we've talked about a whole lot in this episode. Unions, employer associations, the Fair Work Act, unfair dismissal, discrimination.
Leave entitlements, flexible work arrangements, occupational health and safety, and even record keeping.
Whew, that's a mouthful.
It's a lot to digest, for sure,
Yeah.
but it gives you a good overview of the complexities of workplace relations in Australia.
And we're not done yet. In our final installment, we'll shift our focus to the future of HRM
We'll explore the trends and challenges shaping the workplace of tomorrow.
and how HRM can adapt to meet those challenges.
It's going to be an exciting conversation, so stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive.
And we're back for the grand finale of our HRM deep dive. We've talked about the basics, the ins and outs of workplace relations in Australia, and now it's time to look ahead. What does the future hold for the world of human resource management?
Well, the future of work is changing fast, and HRM is right there on the front lines. It's a really interesting time to be in this field, that's for sure.
I'm picturing like HR professionals of the future being less about paperwork and more like, tech-savvy strategists.
You're not wrong. Technology is definitely one of the biggest trends shaping the future of HRM. Things like artificial intelligence and automation are becoming more and more important.
Okay, but before we go full sci-fi on this, what does that actually look like in practice? Are we talking robots doing job interviews?
Not quite robots, but AI is already being used for a lot of routine HR tasks. Things like screening resumes, scheduling interviews, even personalizing onboarding for new hires.
So it's like having a super efficient assistant handling all that admin stuff.
Exactly. It frees up HR professionals to focus on more strategic things like talent development, employee engagement, building a great company culture.
Those things that actually require human interaction and strategic thinking.
Right. It's about moving from just processing transactions to really shaping the future of work within the organization.
And speaking of the future of work, it feels like the nature of work itself is changing too. More remote work, flexible schedules, the gig economy, all of that.
Absolutely. The traditional 9-to-5 office job is becoming less and less common in a lot of industries.
Which makes sense, especially after, everything that's happened in recent years with so many people working remotely. But that must create a whole new set of challenges for HR, right?
It does. Like, how do you manage performance when everyone's working from different locations? How do you build a strong team when people aren't physically together?
And how do you maintain a company culture when everyone's scattered?
Those are all big questions. HR has to adapt to manage a more dispersed and diverse workforce.
It's about finding new ways to communicate, to build trust, to make people feel connected even if they're not in the same room.
Exactly. It's like creating a virtual water cooler where
Yeah.
people can still chat and connect even if they're miles apart.
I like that analogy. So we've talked about technology, the changing nature of work. What else is on the horizon for HRM?
But one thing that's becoming increasingly important is data analytics.
Oh, data. Everyone's talking about data these days. What does that look like in the context of HR?
Think about all the data that HR departments have access to. Things like employee demographics, performance reviews, salary information.
Training records, engagement surveys, all of that.
Right, it's a goldmine of information. And now, with all the new analytics tools available, we can actually use that data to make better decisions.
So it's not just about gut feelings anymore. It's about actually understanding what's going on, what makes employees tick.
Exactly. Data analytics can help us figure out what motivates people, what makes them stay with a company, what makes them leave.
It can help us identify trends, predict future needs, make smarter decisions about everything from hiring to compensation.
It's about using data to tell a story, to make HR more strategic and evidence-based.
I like it. Data-driven HR, that's the future.
And another really important area for the future of HRM is employee well-being, especially mental health.
Yeah, this is huge. It's not just about offering a gym membership or a fruit basket. It's about genuinely caring about employees' mental and emotional health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in today's world, where burnout and stress are so common, it's crucial to create a supportive work environment.
Where people feel comfortable talking about these issues, where they know they can get help if they need it.
Exactly. And HR has a big role to play in promoting work-life balance, providing access to mental health resources, just creating a workplace where people feel valued and supported.
It's about building that culture of psychological safety.
Exactly. And finally, we can't talk about the future of HRM without mentioning diversity and inclusion.
This is so important. It's about creating a workplace that reflects the real world, where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed.
Exactly. It's not just about ticking boxes. It's about building a culture where everyone feels like they belong, where their voice is heard, and where their contributions are valued.
It's about recognizing that diversity makes us stronger, that different perspectives and experiences bring new ideas and innovation to the table.
And studies have shown that diverse companies are actually more successful, so it's good for business too.
So, as we wrap up this amazing deep dive into the world of HRM, what are the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest takeaway is that HRM is changing. It's becoming less about administration and more about strategy, more about understanding people and creating a workplace where everyone can thrive.
It's about recognizing that people are a company's most valuable asset and that investing in their well being and development is key to success.
The future of HRM is full of possibilities, but it also presents new challenges. We need to be adaptable, embrace new technologies, and never lose sight of the human element of work.
We need to be lifelong learners, always curious, always evolving as the world of work continues to change.
And most importantly, we need to remember that at the end of the day, HRM is about people. It's about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued, respected, and empowered to do their best work.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of HRM. We hope you've learned something new and that you're feeling inspired to create a more human-centered workplace.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those workplaces humming with positive energy.